I have a dear old lady client whom used to be a co-worker. I'll call her Susie. At a recent home visit I installed TeamViewer on her computer with her permission. Impossible to walk her through the simple download over the phone. She calls me up for help and I have her open TeamViewer. After 5 whole minutes of. So I type in the numbers? No, just read them to me please. Okay, I typed it in, but it doesn't look right. Oh okay, now Firefox is open. Can you minimize those windows and read me the code please? Okay, I closed them all. What number did you want again dear? We finally got connected. She has a large folder of MP4 files of her deceased daughter. Of course they all show as VLC traffic cone icons. I'm barely able to walk her through plugging in a USB drive. I want her to have as many backups of this irreplaceable footage as possible. Backed up to multiple drives in the cloud, we can now move forward. Change icons to thumbnails and ask if there's anything else. She wants to label the tapes, so over the next 2 hours I show her how to rename. I get her to do one and she deletes the file extension. We get over that and she's successfully renamed a single file. All she has to do is press enter or click anywhere else. Cannot do it. Yes, the enter key. It's big, usually next to shift, on the right, near the numbers. I don't see it. Look down at the keyboard. It's the enter key. Remember return on typewriters? Yes, just like that. I'm looking but I really don't see it at all. I'm sorry. Susie, you were my office manager for 3 years. I watched you work on a computer extremely similar to this one the entire time. I'm having a hard time rectifying the fact that you can't find the enter key. I know, I'm sorry I can't find it. I don't even see a keyboard on the screen. I have to mute because I'm laughing in a mentally unhealthy manner. Susie, I apologize for becoming frustrated. Look down at your hands please. Okay. Where are they? My right hand is on the mouse and my left hand is on the keyboard. Oh my god. I am so sorry. It's totally fine, I apologize for not being effective in my communication. If you feel comfortable changing the names, go ahead. Meanwhile let me set up another home visit where you can tell me what your desired outcome is and I'll handle everything. Does that sound amenable? Lovely old lady. I'm sure it'll be worth the 3 meatballs she ladles into my bare hands. Note: these events are based on a true story, but have been tweaked for storytelling, dramatic effect and protecting the identities of the guilty. At my company, we work with a lot of data. Real thick data. Exabytes of the stuff. Honestly, we have a bit of a problem. I'm pretty sure our execs snort lines of crushed up data instead of just doing cocaine like all the normal millionaires. While they're up in their tower huffing whatever comes out the other end of a 400G network cable, we have to actually figure out how to make sense of the mess. Anyone can collect data. But cleaning it, aggregating it, and turning it into something meaningful is an art. And yes, it is an art. It's subjective, open to interpretation, and 2 teams with the exact same group of datasets will produce widely diverging results depending on how they process it. Point is, doing big data right is hard. Part of doing it right is testing the quality of these enormous datasets and the tooling we build to process it. On this particular day I was setting up a test for uniqueness on one of our larger datasets. We had changed the hash function used to index our records. The test itself was simple: generate a hash based on the data, and compare hashes to make sure no 2 hashes matched. If we had any duplicate hashes, it would output all the matching hashes along with the original data so I could see if there was a collision or if someone had put a duplicate row into the dataset. Some idiot on the engineering team, me, had been using a dummy hash function while setting up the test harness and forgot to swap it out for the real thing. The dummy code returned a simple zero of the data with a max entropy of 8 bits. Production data was a few billion rows and processing would take a while, so the doofus on the engineering team, me, kicked off the test job on Friday before logging out for the weekend. Sunday night, I started seeing alerts from our monitoring system flooding in. I sent up a quick prayer for both the on-call and whatever poor sod on the engineering team was responsible for the mess, again, me. I thought nothing more of it and ate a nice steak dinner while enjoying the remainder of my weekend. On Monday, I come in to find that everything stopped over the weekend. Virtual machines, network services, serverless compute, databases, All of it went offline. I got to my desk, jumped on a call and began the arduous process of working together with everyone to get my team's portion of services back online. Slowly, details trickle in from info with the investigation of the outage. A runaway script had consumed an ungodly amount of compute and storage, and since everything was hosted in the cloud instead of running out of space, it just ran up the bill. One of the global billing monitors for the entire subscription had tripped, triggering a shutdown of all services. After we restored services, I got back to my tasks from the previous week. The output file from my job on Friday wasn't there, even though the job was marked as completed. As I dug into the logs, I saw to my utter astonishment it had written out enough data to give our entire C-suite a contact high off the fumes. Now I was nervous. A quick review of my code revealed the error. My dummy hash function caused the program to erroneously detect nearly everything as duplicate data. It then happily output all the duplicates it thought it saw, which was nearly everything. It did this for each individual record, resulting in a number of output rows roughly square relative to the input. The final file was roughly 8 petabytes. I'll leave as an exercise to the reader how much that would cost to store in Azure. All I'll say is that Infra's automatic billing shut-off was a last-line defense to extreme cost overruns. Thankfully the fallout was minimal since it was a stupid but innocent error. As a punishment, I received a slap on the wrist from my manager. My punitive task was being made to design and implement changes to our infrastructure so runaway test jobs couldn't consume endless resources, as well as separating out billing for test and prod. Honestly, my manager's manager probably had it worse since they had to go to the C-suite and ask for more operations budget. I'd love to say there was a lesson here, but I can't find one. We didn't learn anything new. We just didn't put up guardrails until someone drove the truck off the proverbial cliff. If anything, seeing my boss actually have my back was the biggest lesson here. I know through the grapevine there was a lot of kerfuffle about the extra spending, but I never felt the impact personally. TL. Drive. Monkey summons and squared typewriters. Budget goes boom. Back in the days when network interfaces weren't integrated into motherboards, we had a Dell server, couldn't swear to it, but might have been a 350, with a dead NIC. We had a spare card, but there was a problem, the case was locked and nobody knew where the key was. We wouldn't normally think this would be a problem, because power edges of the era only had 4 different numbered keys that unlocked them and we had a coffee mug full of them in the office. I don't recall which number was which so made them up here. We needed an 03, we had about a dozen 01s, a handful of 02s, and a couple of 04s. But not a single 03. I asked around a couple of other departments if anyone had an 03 power edge key lying around, nobody did. Asked a bit more organization widely, still no luck. We could no doubt have asked Dell to help and waited a day or 3 for them to show up and paid them some dollar. But the complaints from the outage were getting more frequent, and it was out of warranty anyway. So I collected the biggest flat blade screwdriver I could find, an adjustable wrench, and a hammer. Presented the items to the boss and his eyebrows slightly bounced off the ceiling, but he did approve my proposal for server violence. I headed back to the problematic server. Shut it down, then shoved the screwdriver into the lock, gave the end a couple of good whacks with the hammer, then stuck the wrench onto the screwdriver handle and gave it a good twist. Replacing the NIC was a bit anticlimactic after that. I work at a large university in the US. One of the top universities in fact. That doesn't mean that the students, staff, or faculty are any more computer literate than any other clueless users. I do not know if this belongs here but here goes. Phone rings. Me, hello, thank you for calling University Technology Services, my name is Up, how may I help you? Student, yeah, my toilet is clogged. Me. Taking a few seconds to process what I just heard. Student, how soon do you think someone can come and fix it? Me. You do know this is the University Technology Help Desk. We cannot help you with any plumbing issues. Student, but you're the help desk. Me. Yes, I could maybe help you connect your toilet to the internet but I cannot help with a plumbing issue. I told her to call her dorm's area desk and they could help her put in a service request. SMH. For context, I'm not in the US, so yesterday was a regular working day for us. I had to work until 9 p.m. to finish an upgrade for a customer. It was a classic situation where they had been using an ancient deprecated version of our software because it works fine, until everything broke in 7 different ways and they admitted they'd been having issues for years and maybe installing the newest version wasn't such a bad idea after all. The director of the company was especially worried about some scheduled tasks that run every morning and load yesterday's data into the software. They kept repeating they have 300 users who log into the software at 9 a.m. and need the data to work. It was a bit tricky to migrate all the tasks created with the old software, but in the end we did it and all the tests were fine. I logged off around 9 p.m. and was looking forward to a late start this morning. The director called at 7 a.m. this morning in a panic, wanting to know why they couldn't see yesterday's data and how come the scheduled tasks had not run. Their scheduled tasks run at 7:30 a.m. But hey, at least I wasn't the one who had to handle the influx of tickets from the users. This thing changed, what's wrong? Sir/ma'am, there was a software upgrade. We sent out emails last week and yesterday and also this morning explaining what would change. Well, I saw your email, I read the subject. Do you expect me to read the entire email as well? I just got hired by another staffing agency calling itself a consulting firm. Got hired on a Friday, expected to be on site a few hundred miles away by Monday, despite first interviewing with them a month ago. I like a company with a hiring practice and a or deadline. I sing the rest of the cake song as I ride my motorcycle to the client site. Long trips on a motorcycle lend to singing. Thankfully nobody else can hear me. I've got a few more hours before I get to my hotel. This trip will be 2 days for introductions and whiteboarding, then home to work remotely for the rest of the engagement. I'm doing the security thing as a part of a bigger, multi-consulting firm project which resembles a city park pigeon feeding frenzy, a bunch of rotund, gray creatures loudly squabbling over a scattering of sustenance in bleak surroundings. I'm not too proud to grab some stale bread crust for myself, though. Tonight's destination is a scabby Hampton Inn. I'll be here 2 days, I tell myself. I bathe and fall asleep, skipping dinner. The next morning, I throw on a suit, hit a convenient Waffle House, then ride carefully to the Big Corp regional offices, in a nicely landscaped office park. Looking at the other company names on the signage, all I see are no-name startups and those odd public-private organizations trying to get a tech company to build in their Rust Belt Valley. This office park was brought to you by Richard Florida, quoting cargo cultists and third-generation backslapping poles, so it's half graft and half hipster chic. It has both an unused ultimate frisbee field and designated motorcycle parking. Up front, too. I feel seen. I back my bike into one of the spots. As I get off the bike, I do a little dance to celebrate parking like a king. My ride parks safe in one of the 8 spots. A Celeste green Vespa and a handsomely weathered BMW/7n.wikipedia.org web link share the area. I make my way in the long, sprawling office building. It's a bunch of enclosed offices off a central, wide atrium hallway. Arched glass roof and exposed painted metal frameworks places this building in the mid-1990s, an attempt to make an office park look like a hip mall from the 80s. I check in with the receptionist and get to hang out in the waiting room, lobby. I'm now in the functional gray fabric cube maze. Familiar territory for a consultant. A few minutes and then Squirrel shows up. Squirrel has a government name, I'm sure, but I can only remember him as Squirrel. He chatters away and has that odd freeze and stare reflex from time to time. Squirrel's both apologizing to me for something and relaying his position in the IT hierarchy here at Grey Goo. He radiates enough insecurity to make me squint. Despite Grey Goo's generic webpage, they're the middleman you've never heard of in a few industries. For complicated reasons, a significant amount of sensitive data flows through them. Outside of the occasional NPR pledge drive shoutout, you'd never know their name. But they know you. Someone you trust trusts them. Grey Goo's trying to do a bunch of things at the same time: migrate to the cloud, launch a few new products and fix a few security problems. Each of these is being run by a different consulting firm. These can either be showcases of professionalism or passive-aggressive spatula fights. I don't care, it's all billable. Squirrel stops and points at a chair in a bullpen mostly full of younger, more casually dressed people with headsets. Squirrel, we're running low on space, so I'm putting you here with the help desk. I have just enough time to stow my gear, work the coffee machine and find a chair in the largest conference table. Wishful thinking and lies by omission are relayed to us via PowerPoint decks for 3 hours. I have learned that I'm on 2 tasks. 1. I'll be managing our teams of pen testers in their attempts to poke holes in Grey Goo's defenses. 2. There's a project to assess physical security at their satellite offices. I walk back to my bullpen digs. A handful of headset-wearing folks lean back and take stock of the middle-aged suit-wearing douchebag. Me, hey, folks. It's been a while since I've worked help desk. Not a smile. This is going to be a tough audience. While checking through an hour's worth of administrativa, I hear the usual patter of a help desk. No, not your _personal_ password to Gmail, the one we gave you. $local_sports_team is a disappointment, as usual. No, you can't edit that email you just sent outside the company. I'm going to quit this shit once my crypto recovers. Printers do that. My email ding. Seems I'm being invited to a meeting where I get to defend a penetration test report. I gather from the people invited and the agenda, some program manager isn't happy with some findings and wants to relitigate severity and scope. I guess I should read the report before I explain it. There are a few different ways to read a penetration test report guide.com web link. Non-technical people start at the beginning, lulled by the short, simple statements in the executive summary sandwiched between pretty graphs. IT operations and developers jump to the critical and high findings to see if they're going to be called on the carpet. This is cheating, like starting at Daltrey's Scream and Won't Get Fooled Again. I start with the harder choices, the mediums. If the mediums are scarier than usual, the writers of the report wanted to downplay the findings. If they're not particularly awful, the writers just picked a few lows and promoted them to see fairer. These are some scary mediums, which tells me that Grey Goo doesn't actually like being told their baby is ugly. I take stock of my situation. I'm at a help desk at a client that would rather have me shut up and smile. This is going to be fun. To be continued.